This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
And good morning, Saturday morning to you, November the 5th, 2022. This is the Jack and Mac Saturday debate show with Doc. And so here we are. Pags won't be here. He's flying to Houston to get ready for the big World Series game tonight. Let's go Phillies. I think all three of us are hoping that the Phillies win tonight and then can win it again tomorrow. So the Philadelphia sports guy is going to be rooting for Philadelphia sports in Texas. But here we are, Mac and Jack. How you guys doing today?
Yeah, I'm good, but you can't hook me up, stereotype me with the Phillies. I mean, since when am I a Philly fan? Maybe I did say in the beginning of the series I prefer the Phillies win a little more because maybe I identify with some of their players in New York link, at least in the past. Girardi manager, Gregorius shortstop, Zach Wheeler, Met pitcher. But you can't link me with the Phillies. Come on.
I'm saying that I think we're rooting for them over the Astros. Are you rooting for the Astros?
Well, I'd like to see a Game 7. I love Game 7, so you can maybe say based on that.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we are here with Jack Hirsch, who's rooting for the Phillies tonight to force a Game 7, and then we'll find out tomorrow on the big sports show when they talk football every Sunday morning. They'll be able to ask Jack who he's going to root for tomorrow night should the Phillies win. But somehow deep in your heart, Jack, I think you're going to root for the Phillies tomorrow night too if they win. I don't think you're going to root for the Astros.
For Pags' sake, out of friendship for Pags, I guess I'll do it.
All right, so I was correct. Welcome to the Mac and Jack Sports Show, where we are rooting for the Phillies to win the World Series. How are you, Mac?
Good morning to you guys. Good morning to everyone out there. And it is the Mac, Jack, and Doc show. Just I got to remind Doc of that all the time. Yeah, I mean, listen, I everybody loves the underdog, right? If your team's not involved in it, you love the underdog. Phillies from around here, a little local love going on here. So I definitely hope the Phillies win the World Series.
Houston will win tonight. If you want a prediction, it's all over tonight.
Possibly. Hope not, but we'll see what happens.
I won't be watching the game tonight because I will be sleeping, as you all know. We're going to talk a little marathon in a little while, but let's talk about the Astros since that seems to be the topic we're going with to begin the show. We get the debate questions in advance, mostly from Jack. Mac provided a few this week as well. And here's our first one. If the Astros win the World Series, should we consider them a modern baseball dynasty? What do you think?
We should, but I don't think they will for some reason because they're not considered that right now. Look, in the last 7 years, it would have meant they went to 4 World Series and they won 2. And in the past, the Yankees were considered a dynasty when they would lose a number of World Series. I know they won 5 in a row from 1949 through 1953. But the Yankees always had a history. They'd win a World Series, they'd lose a World Series, but they were still considered a dynasty. Something about not winning it all in this day and age, I mean, hits home. Just getting to the series isn't enough. So when people are going to evaluate Houston, they're going to say, 2 World Series victories, assuming they win, this time around. In the last 7 years, that's very nice. Let me ask you this. Are the Red Sox from 2004 to 2018, they had 4 World Series winners in that span. Did anyone even whisper that the Red Sox were a dynasty in any way, shape, or form? But they actually were a modern-day dynasty, the Red Sox, the way things exist. Because there's so many teams now. It's not like the old days where you have the best record, you automatically get into the World Series. You got to go through a whole playoff thing. And let's face it, no one cares what you did during the regular season. For the most part, if you get bumped out of the playoffs, just look at the Dodgers this year. No one cares what they did in the long run. Okay, so is Houston a modern answer? Are they a modern day dynasty? Absolutely. Are they going to be considered as such? No.
I don't know. I think it all comes down to almost like everything a matter of opinion, right? I mean, there's no doubt the Yankees have been a dynasty, at least were a dynasty. I think the Red Sox, even if you go back to the 70s when they were challenging, the Big Red Machine and everything, they weren't considered a dynasty back then, even though they had a good team. I think the Big Red Machine, would they win 1 or 2 World Series, Jack?
2 in a row.
Right, 2 in a row, and they were considered a dynasty. So, I mean, I think it comes down to a matter of opinion. I don't think Houston is a dynasty. They definitely would have been a dynasty before. I don't think they're really a dynasty now. But it's all a matter of opinion, like everything else. So, in my opinion, Houston is not a dynasty, Doc.
I as you know, I send you my answers in advance of the show, and I'm going to agree with Jack on this one. I think, for all intents and purposes, for the modern day, they seem to be. They're the team that's in it the most. It's them or the Dodgers. And if they keep winning World Series, I think if it ends this year, let's say they win the World Series this year, and then they're not in the World Series and they're not competitive the next couple of years, then maybe they weren't a dynasty. They were just a very good team for a period of time. I'll agree on that. But I just happen to feel like they're so tough. The thing that makes Houston so tough is there's a lot of turnover with that team, and yet they continue to win, which says there's something organizationally that's really working. Like they had Garrett Cole, then they don't have Garrett Cole. They had Carlos Correa, then they don't have Carlos Correa. They had George Springer, then they don't have George Springer, and they keep winning. So there's something that's working, and it's working well, and that's usually the mark of a dynasty. It's not the same necessarily players that go through, though there are some consistent guys like on that Yankee dynasty. Yogi was there for the better part of all of that. But, it started with DiMaggio and then it ended with Mantle, and guys like Roger Maris weren't there in the beginning, but they were there at the end. So Whitey Ford was there for most of it. But in the beginning, it was like Allie Reynolds and Vic Raschi and Eddie Lopat, who were the guys who were holding down the fort in the starting rotation. So good question.
Matt, you and Mac, Doc, both made great points. Okay. I don't know whether you realize it. Now let me address the great points both of you made. First, Mac compared Houston to the Big Red Machine. Now, if Houston wins the World Series this year, that would mean in the last 7 years, they went to 4 World Series and they won 2. The Big Red Machine from 1970 through 1976 in a 7-year period would have went to 4 World Series and won 2. It would be identical to what Houston did.
Except they wouldn't be back-to-back.
It wouldn't be back-to-back. But you mentioned, Doc, the player turnover, which is interesting too. The Big Red Machine didn't have the player turnover that Houston has. Houston's had wonderful ball players. You could argue great in this era to an extent, okay? But they didn't have the legendary players of the Big Red Machine: Johnny Bench, Joe Morgan, Pete Rose, Tony Perez, Hall of Famers, Ken Griffey Sr., okay, George Foster, who was a great player at the time, Dave Concepcion, like on and on and on. But so I think it's the players you remember too. I don't think these players on the Houston team are going to be quite remembered the same way, because Carlos Correa wouldn't have been there for the last World Series. George Springer wouldn't have been there. Jose Altuve is never going to be thought of Gurriel as great as the guys I just mentioned, and unless their career really takes off, a bit more going into the future. So I think the players, the remembrance, we remember the Big Red Machine. They have an identity. This Houston team also, there's an X factor. Their identity, unfortunately, might always be a sign-stealing scandal. We might forget it temporarily, but years from now, when people think back on that great Houston run, that's going to come into the conversation, fair or not.
Well, would you consider the Oakland A's of the early 70s a dynasty, or the Baltimore
Orioles? In a row.
The Baltimore Orioles that challenged them sometimes? Would you consider them a good team or a dynasty?
That is a great question. Well, the Orioles won the World Series in '66, And then they went to 3 in a row, 69 through 71, but they only won one of the 3.
So they're like a Houston.
They're not looked back on as being a dynasty. They're looked on as being exceptional. But the bottom line is they only won 1 out of 3. An Oakland Athletic team later on went to 3 World Series in a row, I think 88 through 90, and they only won 1 there. So, so if you're going to 3 in a row, you better win 3 in a row. Otherwise, your body of work has to be expanded somewhat.
I think if you're going to be a dynasty, you have to be the team that's winning it all, right? And I think the whole term came about with that book by Peter Golenbach all those years ago when he wrote about the Yankees from 1949 to 1963 or 64, because that really was a dynasty. I mean, they were basically in the World Series every single year, I guess, except 1954 and 1959. So, I mean, that's a long period of sustained excellence. And, before that, the Yankees were in a lot of World Series. They like 36 to 39. They won 4 in a row back then. So I think the A's would be a dynasty because they did win 3 in a row in the early 70s. And those teams did have some great players, legendary players that people remember today. Maybe that's another mark that Jack was bringing up, which was a great point. Of these guys on the Astros, how many of them are going to stand this test of time and be remembered in baseball lore, except for a guy like Jose Altuve, who unfortunately, listen, you reap what you sow. And the whole cheating scandal and the whole thing where he wouldn't take his shirt off because they thought he might have had a buzzer on and all that kind of stuff. That's always going to be part of his legacy, true or not, whether he cheated himself or not. That's always going to be part of the legacy. And that's going to be a mark on his name, rather than like when you look back at guys like Johnny Bench or Reggie Jackson or Mickey Mantle or whomever, because those guys, they seem to do it the right way, right? They went out there and they played their hardest and they won, leaving it all on the field. And they didn't find a different way to try to win.
Well, we talk about the older Yankees. How about the newer ones, the Jeter's Yankees, the Bernie Williams,
Oh, that's good. Great point. Yeah.
So would you consider them a dynasty, or would you just say they were a very good team?
I think that was a dynasty of sorts.
Modern day dynasty. Yeah, they went to 6 World Series in 8 years. Well, we use the word modern day dynasty because you're never going to have again the run the Yankees had, 14 World Series in 16 years. That's insane. That's never going to happen again. Look, in other sports like
football, though the Patriots came close.
Right. I was going to mention that. But the Patriots had at least a dynasty within the AFC East for like 20 years. I mean, they'd virtually always win the division. Worst case scenario, beat a wild card team. But this Houston team, I would say they'd be worthy of being called a modern day dynasty. And I'll be honest, we're underrating the Astros, what they've accomplished. If they do win this World Series, I think people are going to tend to underrate their achievement.
I think so too. But you bring up another great segue. These segues just seem to work so well. So there is another question, and it sort of ties into the Patriots, because there are 2 great teams, previously great teams in the NFL, who are both right now with records of 3-5. It's the Packers and the Buccaneers. 2 great quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, both nearing the ends of their careers. They're on the downside, obviously, but still considered elite, both having disappointing seasons. So the question that was proposed for us is, which of those 2 NFL teams has been the biggest disappointment so far? So what do you think?
I think you're mixing up 2 questions first. I think you're asking what's a disappointing team and whether Brady or Rodgers are going to go to the Super Bowl, right?
Actually, I was trying to do it on the fly here. So yes. So let's start off with that. Which of those 2 teams?
They go hand in hand. The
yeah, sort of. So which of those 2 teams do you think has a better chance to turn it around? Let's go that way. and then we'll say which one has been the bigger disappointment. You can answer them both or not at the same time. Thank you, Mac.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Why don't you take it, Mac?
I think Tampa Bay has the best shot at making the playoffs, and it's not mainly because of Brady. It's because their team has a lot more better players than Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers really doesn't have a defense, and his offensive line isn't that good. He's still a good quarterback, but he doesn't have time to pass the ball, and he doesn't have receivers to catch the ball. On the other hand, Tom Brady has a more talented team. He's got a better running game. His defense is good. His offensive line, not so good. But they're still making throws down the field. He's still passing for a lot of yards, if not for touchdowns. So I think Tampa Bay, just because of the team, the overall team, has a better shot than the Packers are making it to the playoffs. And I don't think Aaron Rodgers can do it all by himself.
Well, I don't think the Buccaneers have a better running game than the Packers, with Aaron Jones, but that's just a matter of opinion, okay? Don't want to really debate that. I mean, we have to deal with reality here. The Buccaneers have a 3-5 record. They're only one game out of first place.
Okay. Yes.
The team ahead of them is the Atlanta Falcons, who aren't much at all, okay? Who are not going to have a winning record, the Falcons. They're not going to take off. So just based on how pathetic that division is, the Buccaneers have a better chance than the Packers, who dug themselves a big hole. They're a few games behind the Vikings for the division lead. They're not going to catch the Vikings, and they're really going to have to come on like gangbusters to get a wild card, position. When all is said and done, the Packers might have a better record than the Buccaneers, but which team has a better chance at turning it around? If we're basing it on who has a better chance of making the playoffs, it's the Buccaneers. But with that said, I wouldn't give up on the Packers. Let me address Doc's negativity once again. He's ready to retire Rodgers and Brady. He's just ready to retire them. He doesn't care about circumstance. Doc doesn't care that Aaron Rodgers has no receivers. Doc doesn't care about the turmoil and Brady.
You're making all this stuff up.
He just wants results. He wants to see Brady perform on the field. There are outside factors that are causing, these guys not to perform up to the level they have in the past, but it doesn't mean that they're declining. You're looking at their age and you figure, oh, well, because they're older, that means whenever they slip, they're done. I mean, you can't think that. You got to give them an opportunity. If a guy is, if Doc was a GM and he had a 27-year-old pitcher who had an off-season, Doc would say, he could bounce back. But if the guy's 37, he's not allowed an off-season. Tommy John used to say that. He hated
Tommy John
that.
did say that all the
He
time.
said when you're older, you're not allowed to have an off year. You're not allowed, even though it might actually be nothing more than an off year. Okay?
Unfortunately, yeah.
I was going to defend you.
Yeah,
I was going to defend you here, Doc. Listen, Doc did not say that they were through. He just said they're on the downswing, and they are. They're older now. So yeah. I mean, listen, you can't beat Father Time, Jack. I mean, they're gonna fall off. They seem to be falling off a little bit this year. Aaron Rodgers is kind of one of the Zen guys who likes going to those sweat lodges and whatever else he does there to try to.
He's a deep thinker. He's a deep thinker, Aaron Rodgers. Okay, I mean, come on, you can't deal with deep thinkers.
He should be thinking more about football than whatever else he's thinking about.
He's thinking why he hasn't gotten more help. That's what he's probably thinking.
I would be thinking that too. Sorry to interrupt you, Doc. Go ahead.
No, I appreciate that. Listen, I think it's a fair statement to say that Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady are on the downsides of their career, because they are. And Mac, you make the point that Father Time wins always. He has beaten everybody. And we've mentioned this on the show before. We've talked about this, but neither one of them really seems to be as invested and as happy on the field. They seem to be angry. They seem to be forcing things. Tom Brady's had the off-field problems with his wife and all that. And, people want to make that as an excuse for why he's not doing well. But, You know what? The idea is he's being paid to perform on the field, and the performance isn't there. And it sort of goes both ways, right? We can't. And I'm a Brady fan, you know that, because my son is a huge Tom Brady fan. He's a Yankee fan who's a Patriots fan, or was, and now he's rooting for the Buccaneers because he really just came of age when Brady was great, and that's what happens. That's when we become fans of teams. And so through his exuberance for Tom Brady, I've always rooted for Tom Brady. So I've always been a Brady fan, but you can't say, oh, he's got this magic and he's able to do great things and rise above, and he's this transcendent figure who's always able to win, and at the same time say, yeah, I know, but he can't win this year because he has the off-field stuff. The two things don't go, they're not together. He's either able to rise above it, which he hasn't been able to do this year, or there's things that are happening off the field that are upsetting his ability to play well. But if that's the case, that's a problem. And I will agree with Jack that if of the two teams, the Packers or the Buccaneers, which one has a better chance to go into the playoffs and have some success, I think it's got to be the Bucs, because they're in the division with the Falcons. And the Packers are trying to compete against the Vikings, who are 6-1. I don't see the Packers sneaking into the playoffs as a wild card. I think the Buccaneers either, but Buccaneers, because they're in a weak division, could actually win the division. And if they do that, then anything could happen. Maybe Brady turns it on one last time.
Well, let me say, last year, guys, Aaron Rodgers was the MVP for the second year in a row. Tom Brady was runner-up. So I don't want to hear 1 year later there's such slippage in their performance. Football is a team game. If you don't have the weapons, around you, I mean, you're not going to perform. A quarterback can't do it by himself. And because they're older, we're thinking that. If both guys were 10 years younger, we wouldn't think they were on the decline. We'd think it was the circumstances of their team.
You know what's great here? You know what's great here? We got Jack, who loves Aaron Rodgers, and you, who love Tom Brady, and they're both not going to make Tampa Bay might make the playoffs this year. And that's going to be it. They're not winning nothing in the playoffs. As you said, and as I've said in the past, team sport. And right now, Tampa Bay just has the better team, and Green Bay does not. That's all there is to it.
And neither team is performing especially well, which then transitions me to the question I was supposed to ask, which was, which team has been the biggest disappointment in the whole NFL? Who's been the biggest disappointment in the NFL right now?
To me, any team, whoever we mention is going to be a bad team right now, who we thought was going to be much better. I was going to say the Carolina Panthers, because I really thought they could win their division. And what are they, like 2-6 right now? But only 2 games out of first place in that pathetic division. They might still win the division if they could come on. I'd say the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions lost so many close games last year. They've made a fool out of me because I told Mac they'd have double-digit victories this year. And Mac told me no way last year. And it's the same Lions. They're finding ways to lose games the way they did before. They're close games. They always look like they're going to win these games. You see the scores as you tune in on Sunday, afternoon football. Oh, the Lions are winning. The Lions are doing this. The Lions are doing that. It's like a race that they're winning the whole way. And then at the end, they lose it. I've about had it with the Lions. And they have talent on that team. I mean, and they're going to be drafting high again. And, when you're a young team and you're losing a lot of close games 1 year, there's got to be a turnaround the next year. Not a major turnaround, but you're turning it around somewhat. And if you have the same exact thing, I don't want to hear that your team is being competitive. You're not getting blown out. You're playing hard. It becomes depressing because we always want to see progress, that, in whatever we do. I mean, we're going to talk about racing later. You've had times, Doc, and I know running a certain distance, you might not have met your goal, but you want to see a little improvement, even if it's by 1 second in a race. It means something to you. Oh, personal best 1 second. It's not as much as I want, but you want to see that improvement. But if you're caught on the same time, the same way the Lions lose over and over again, I mean, I'm turned off by them. Mac, you were right about the Lions. Maybe they win a few games before the year's over, but they dug themselves so much of a hole. They're not going to contend for a playoff position, even if some way they start coming on, as the year goes on.
Well, that's always the way it's been in Detroit. Detroit has never been to a Super Bowl and won a Super Bowl. It's sort of one person said it's where the good players go to die is Detroit. So I'm not really disappointed in Detroit. I just think that's just the way it is. And I think that organization, has a lot of work to do. They have to change almost everything before Detroit can become a winning team. And that includes from the GM, maybe even ownership, before they get a shot to really improve that team. My biggest disappointment, believe it or not, Jack, I talk about Russell Wilson as a Hall of Fame quarterback. I believe he is, but is the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos have Russell Wilson. They have a good defense. They have good receivers, and yet they have a losing record. In fact, I don't know if they'll even make the playoffs this year, and I thought they would. I thought they would challenge Kansas City this year, and they're not even close to that yet. And I really can't figure out why. We brought up the head coach. I think it's Hackett, who really does not know what he's doing at all. He's a rookie coach. I think he was an offensive coordinator before he became coach. But this guy is in over his head. He does not know how to run a team. He does not know how to manage a game. He does not know how to set up schemes and get the team ready to play. The team just doesn't look organized at all. So my biggest disappointment this year is the Denver Broncos, Doc.
Yeah, these are both great disappointing teams. The team that surprised me for being so mediocre is also the Bengals. They're just 4-4. They were in the Super Bowl last year, and now they're just, I'm not watching football as closely as you guys, but, I watch the scores, and every week I think, oh, the Bengals, they'll win. And then, more often than not, or at least as often as not, they end up on the losing end. I think they just lost to the Browns on Thursday night, which surprises me. So that's been a disappointing team. Let me call an audible here. I know what Pags' answer would be if he was here, but in the NFC East, let me just make sure I get the right answers here. You've got two teams that, to me, I think are at least surprising. You've got the Eagles, of course. They're 8-0. And then you have the Giants. I don't think anybody expected the Giants to be 6-2. Which of those two teams is most surprising that they're doing that well? Is it the Eagles for being undefeated, or is it the Giants for having a significantly good winning record?
I'd say the Giants, because we have to go back to the beginning of the season. If you said the Eagles would be 8-0, I don't think people would say it's crazy. A lot of people are picking the Eagles to win their division. They were thinking in terms of the Eagles having like an 11-5 record. 8-0 is unexpected. It's a surprise. It's not a complete shock. I think the Giants at 6-2 would have went, whoa, because I think a lot of Giant fans would have been happy at 4-4. They would have been pleased at 4-4. They would have settled for that if you told them after 8 games. So the Giants at 6-2, I think, is more of a pleasant surprise. I'm more unexpected than the Eagles going 8-0.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jack. I think the Eagles just have a very talented team. They made a lot of moves to get that team to be as good as is. The Giants are just, they're doing it just out of hard work. They're getting some breaks. They're a very a team that just doesn't give up. That doesn't matter if they're down in the fourth quarter or not. They're going to come back and they're going to win the game. That's what they feel. They feel like they can play with anybody at any time. Seattle beat them, but Seattle, again, you could consider them a surprise team too. So anyway, I think Giants are the biggest surprise. I think they got a shot at making the playoffs this year. I don't think they'll go far at all. They didn't make no moves at the trade deadline, which I kind of wish they did, but they didn't. I guess they're saving, the money for Saquon Barkley. Maybe Daniel Jones is coming. They're both coming up on contracts. So I think they're keeping the money to sign their players back. great job by the coach. I don't know what he's saying to him, but man, them guys came out and they're playing hard every week, Doc.
Yeah, no doubt about that. You talked about the trade deadline, and we also had the question. We'll go back to the Packers for a moment. Should the Packers have been more active and gotten a wide receiver that could have helped Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. But something I kind of wonder about, are the Packers indirectly giving up on the season at 3-5, thinking, hey, we don't want to give up much to try to salvage this season because we're not sure we can salvage it. So they're not all in. I mean, within their division, the Chicago Bears gave up a number 2 draft choice to get Chase Claypool. Okay, very good wide receiver. You kind of wonder, did the Packers even try? Are they hoping something falls into their lap like OBJ? And they have a history with Aaron Rodgers, the front office. They never drafted really wide receivers, never in the first round when Aaron Rodgers was there. They never went all out to get him that help. So you kind of like wonder with the relationship as well, because Aaron Rodgers is under contract. Are they indirectly sending a message to him? We're going to do what we want. We don't want to hear from you anymore. I mean, I'm speculating. I mean, chances are
wouldn't you want to put your best team on the field? You just signed Aaron Rodgers. He's getting $500 gazillion. Wouldn't you want to surround him with the best players?
Maybe we're not at practice each day. Maybe they feel those young receivers are going to come along. They'll develop. Just be patient, kind of like the Yankees not going after an elite shortstop on the free agent market because they have an Anthony Volpe in waiting. Eventually, one of their young receivers is going to really, a couple of them kind of put it together. But yeah, you would think with the receivers out there, they would get them some type of help. Aaron Rodgers looks like the unhappiest player in the NFL. His body language, he comes out there. It's hard to get him to smile. He seems to be sulking. I mean, they've lost 4 in a row. This season, they play my most disappointing team tomorrow, the Detroit Lions in Detroit. And if the Packers lose that game, I mean, I hate to say a team's finished because you never know, but they're really finished. I just want to point out one thing. Packers, the one year they won the Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers, and he was Super Bowl MVP ages ago. They started that year 4 wins, 6 losses. And Aaron Rodgers said, I guess we're going to have to run the table. And they ran the table the rest of the year, won the Super Bowl. So, you can never tell. Maybe they go on a big winning streak. They get in as a wild card, and they take off. I picked the Packers to lose to the Buffalo Bills in the Super Bowl. That's my prediction. So I don't want to give up on my pick, but they better beat the Lions tomorrow.
Well, you got to look at how much you're paying people today, right? I mean, Aaron Rodgers is getting paid a lot of money, which doesn't allow Green Bay to go out and get these free agents that everybody, all the Packer fans want them to go out and get. You're paying this guy, like Doc said, a lot of money, and you can only divide that up so much. So I'm not blaming Aaron Rodgers for trying to get as much as he can from the team, but he can't turn around and get mad at the team for not signing wide receivers when he's getting $550 million or whatever it is, or $50 million a year. You just don't have that kind of money just laying around to go and pick up people. So they're going to have to go young, Jack, and they're going to have to hope these wide receivers come around for him. And I don't see it happening. I don't see them getting out of second place. If that, who knows? The Bears might even pass them the way they're playing right now. So I truly don't think that the Packers are going to make the playoffs at all, Doc.
I just want to say something. The Packers' last game last Sunday night against the Buffalo Bills, time is of the essence. They're down a couple of scores, fourth quarter. They keep running the ball. Now, they had success running the ball. Even Chris Collinsworth, the analyst, said, I know people think they should pass, but they're having success running the ball. But why wouldn't they pass? Von Miller, the great Buffalo Bill lineman, reportedly said, are you guys going to pass more? He mentioned it to one of the Packer players. maybe that's why the Packers had some success running the ball, but they were eating time off the clock that was working against them. And you kind of wondered, maybe the reality was, even though it made sense to pass the ball, they weren't going to be that successful doing it. So they ran, they get chunks of yardage, but time was going off. And once again, if they lose to Detroit tomorrow, wow. Aaron Rodgers has never been in a position of having to play out the string. And I could tell you, if you guys, I don't know if you've ever been in a job in your life that you absolutely hated going to. Everyone has it. I don't mean a job. There's been a day in your life where you just didn't want to be at work, perhaps that one day. And as much as 1 hour there could drive you up the wall. And if Aaron Rodgers has to spend weeks, in Green Bay, I could see him telling the coaching staff, well, if you want to try Jordan Love for a game, I'm okay with it. That's how fed up, he could be.
I was just going to ask that question. They drafted Jordan Love, right? And he's the backup for Aaron Rodgers now for the next 500 years. If the Packers get to the point where they're out of it, does it make sense for them to give him some reps and let him be the quarterback who plays out the string?
That's a great question. That is a fantastic question. The answer is yes, but will they? I don't think so. For this reason, when they drafted Jordan Love, they traded to move up in the draft to take him in the first round, and they didn't even inform Aaron Rodgers. And when you trade to move up in the first round to get a quarterback, that means your incumbent quarterback is on the clock. He's not supposed to be there long. You don't give up that valuable draft capital. And Aaron Rodgers was stunned. All of a sudden, he figures, how much longer are they intending for me to be the Packer quarterback? Aaron Rodgers then stunned the Packers by having the best year of his career, being maybe the best quarterback in the league. So you can't move on from Aaron Rodgers. Now, Aaron Rodgers became very bitter. He held the Packers up. He made it pure hell for that organization. And they eventually had to cave into Aaron Rodgers, pay him the big money, do everything to keep him happy. They don't want to antagonize Aaron Rodgers. As long as they feel Aaron Rodgers is still their guy as the starting quarterback, they don't want to kind of mess around with him. Okay? So Doc is 100% correct. It makes a ton of sense to see what Jordan Love can do. But, you're dealing with a complex personality in Aaron Rodgers. I know, Mac, I'm interested in what you're going to have to say. You're going to say the heck with Aaron Rodgers. Who gives a darn what he thinks, blah, blah, blah. But you have to give a darn what he thinks.
Jack, listen. Aaron Rodgers has his job. The GM has his job. And that's just the way it is. Aaron Rodgers doesn't run the team. The GM runs the team. If Aaron Rodgers is mad because they drafted Jordan Love, as you said, it's too bad. They're looking out for their future of the organization. It's nothing personal against Aaron Rodgers. He doesn't need to know. And he really hasn't shown me that he really wants to be in Green Bay this year. He stood out. He held out. He didn't go to practice. He just seems uninterested this year. So yeah,
voluntary. No. He didn't hold out, Mac. He didn't have to by contract. He didn't have to go.
Jack, did Brady hold out? Brady was down in a park, almost getting in trouble trying to work with his receivers. That's a guy that wants to be there.
Took 11 days off from the team.
Understand that. I understand that. I understand what you're saying, but he did make an effort before the season even started. Yeah. So to me, Aaron Rodgers is a person who is uninterested in football right now. He doesn't want to play football. He doesn't want to be there. As you said, he sulks. He's mad. Listen, football is about the team. It's not about Aaron Rodgers. It's not even about Tom Brady. It's about a team from top to bottom. And right now, Aaron Rodgers is preventing the Green Bay Packers from winning. That's all I got.
What about Doc's question? If the Packers are out of it, let's say with 2-3 games to go or whatever, let's say a couple of games to go. I mean, at any point, or just the last game of the season. Let's narrow it down to the last game of the season. They're out of playoff contention. Aaron Rodgers wants to play, let's say, the last game. Should the Packers anyway sit him down and feel, look, give Jordan a chance to get in there. He needs to work. We want to see what he can do. I think that's right, Doc. A question.
Yeah. So let me make this even a bigger question. We're gonna blow this question up. Let's say the Packers lose the next 4 weeks or whatever. So there's 5 games left in the season. I'm just spitballing here, and they say, you know what, the season is lost. We know we're not going to make the playoffs. It's over. And they say, you know what, we're going to see what Jordan Love can do. And let's just say, for the sake of fun, that Jordan Love leads him to 5 miraculous victories. He's Aaron Rodgers 5 years ago, or even last year when he was the MVP, and doing these, Hail Marys and all that fun stuff. And all of a sudden, Green Bay gets all excited. And so Green Bay then decides that Jordan Love is the future. It's not going to be Aaron Rodgers. And they put Aaron Rodgers on the trading block. Just bear with me now. So Aaron Rodgers, as he stands, is on the trading block. And let's say the Jets continue to have somewhat of a pretty good year. They're 5-3, I believe, and doing much better than anybody thought possible. But there's a lot of questions about their quarterback, who hasn't necessarily made the next step forward. So let's say the Jets continue to win 1, 2, 3, 4 games, lose 2 or 3, 4 games, but they keep staying at least in the ballpark, and there's this hope for the future. And the Jets finish maybe a game out of the wild card, look into the next year, but Zach Wilson doesn't have a good year, and Aaron Rodgers is now not going to be the quarterback in Green Bay in 2023. If you're the Jets, this is the craziest scenario ever, but if you're the Jets, do you go get Aaron Rodgers to lead you to the next level?
It's not a crazy scenario because it would be history repeating itself.
Well, with Brett Favre, right?
Brett Favre was a Jet. He's a same caliber as Aaron Rodgers. And after Brett Favre left the Jets, he performed at an extremely high level, extremely high. So, and it didn't work out. That's a great question. It's food for thought. I think it depends on how Zach Wilson is progressing the rest of the year. If Zach Wilson is progressing slowly, I put him on pause. And if I don't have to give up much to get Aaron Rodgers, I get him. Zach Wilson will have to sit, and I'll explain you're learning from the master, and I would pause him. It's not like a case like, I don't know how you feel about it, Mac, like Justin Fields with the Bears. I would never take Aaron Rodgers and sit Justin Fields down because Justin Fields is coming along, in little steps very, very nicely. Zach Wilson is, you want to give him time to develop. But if the Jets truly in a position to contend next year for Super Bowl berth, and you have a chance to plug it in with an Aaron Rodgers, I would actually do it. I wouldn't get rid of Zach Wilson. You're there. You're as the backup. You're still going to be the future. I would let him know. I don't know how much longer Aaron is going to play. And, I would go that route.
What do you think, Mac?
Well, first, Aaron Rodgers would have to agree to this, which I don't think he would.
Let's assume he does.
Okay, assume he does. Can he make it in New York? I don't know.
His name is Candy Bar after him.
if Aaron Rodgers doesn't seem like the kind of person that would be able to thrive in New York as a quarterback. He doesn't seem to have that personality. Jordan Love, I don't think Jordan Love, and I know we're just pretending here, I don't think Jordan Love is a franchise quarterback. I think Jordan Love will become a good quarterback eventually. So to me, this scenario this is unbelievable. But could Aaron Rodgers go somewhere else? Could he go to the Raiders? Could he go to Denver? I mean,
Giants.
The Giants.
If you're the GM and they call you the Packers, they'll swap even up Aaron Rodgers for Daniel Jones.
In a minute.
Move on. Would you take it?
I'm not disagreeing with that. Again, you're still in New York, though. You're still playing in New York, and I don't think Aaron Rodgers fits in New York. I think Aaron Rodgers fits somewhere else that's a little bit more laid back that he can go out and he can, he can be himself. And I think the Raiders, I think even Denver, maybe I don't think Carolina would be a good place for him, but the Raiders at Denver, I think Aaron Rodgers would thrive out there.
There are two elements to consider, guys. Okay. I've never been to Green Bay. I'm sure it's a lovely place and everywhere around there. But these guys, even during the season, they have a little bit of a life. And Aaron Rodgers might be the type of guy who would love getting a Park Avenue apartment, going to a nice restaurant in the city, and compare that to the quiet of Green Bay. I don't know what he prefers. Everyone's different. But you make a great point about New York. Archie Manning Sr., okay? He prevented Peyton Manning from going to the Jets because Peyton Manning was the number 1 draft choice of the Jets that year. And Archie Sr. had him stay in college an extra year. Later, he said, Peyton is so sensitive, New York wouldn't have been for him at all. Eli, his other son, is so much different. He'll let all the criticism just roll off. Nothing phases Eli, but Peyton takes things to heart a little too much. So you mentioned a good point with New York. I don't know how Aaron Rodgers would be with New York criticism, but I get the feeling it might not be too good. So you might be onto something, Mac.
Great debate, great discussions. And you guys, we did a lot of auto-bullying right there, a lot of calling Omaha like Peyton Manning. We just went with the different things. I could ask the craziest question of all. Would you trade Zach Wilson for Geno Smith? But I won't ask that question.
No, never, no way.
Geno Smith, the great quarterback in Seattle.
No, I don't think Seattle would do it at this point either. Because you're not sure what Zach Wilson's going to be, but I wouldn't do it if I were the Jets. I wouldn't even consider it.
Good stuff. All right. You know what? We've had such a great long debate and such good discussion. I think it's probably time for our first commercial break. We'll take a couple of moments. We'll play some commercials, and then we will be back on the other side to talk about the biggest event in New York sports that is happening tomorrow on the streets in 5 different boroughs at the same time. All right, but right now, we'll go to a commercial.
I mean, you can see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboy fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready.
I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face. Oh, I'm from Brooklyn. Hey, get us any.
Supporting the needs of our veterans. That's the goal of all of us at Team AmVets. Like Mitch, Carlos, and Kevin from our Welcome Home team that brings furniture to our vets.
We are Team AmVets.
Or Linda from our thrift stores who brings you great bargains every day.
I am Team AmVets.
And John, who picks up your thrift store donations that support California veterans programs.
I am Team AmVets.
Visit our website or Team AmVets thrift store to donate or shop today.
Join the team!
Let me do a quick commercial here for a great event that's happening at Ramapo College on Thursday, November 17th at 6:30 p.m. That's me, and that's the great Yankee outfielder, Roy White. There's going to be a phenomenal evening called An Evening with Roy White at Ramapo College on November 17th. If you go to Start Spreading the News, the blog, you can register for that great event. Roy White will be there talking about his career. He played with Mickey Mantle, Reggie Jackson, Thurman Munson. He went to Japan, played with Sadahara O. He grew up in Compton and overcame poverty, was a player who had to face the segregation in the Deep South when he was in the minor leagues. He overcame that, and he became arguably the greatest left fielder in the history of the Yankees. So it's a great event. It supports the Roy White Foundation. It'll be November 17th. Ramapo College in Mahwah, New Jersey. Get your tickets now. And again, you can get your tickets by going to Start Spreading the News, which, of course, is my Yankee site.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, But one of these days, a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you. Your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
All right, and here we are back again. This is the Doc and Jack and Mac Saturday morning debate show. And you know what? Tomorrow's a big day in New York City, Jack, and I think you want to talk a little about it.
Yeah. I mean, Doc, I think you should talk about it a little more than myself because you're running the New York City Marathon, a great event. I ran 8 of them back in the old days from 1980 through 1992. So it was too long ago, but the race is basically the same. The spirit of the race, the 5 boroughs are the same. Even though when it started in 1970, it was run through the park through Central Park, 1970 through 1975. And the first winner, someone, Gary Mercury, he was just hanging out with his family and basically ran the race on a whim, not knowing he'd be making history. And the race has evolved a lot. The times have gotten a lot faster, but it's 5 boroughs and it never gets tiresome to watch. And it's like a tale of 2 races to the public. There's the elite runners who's going to win, and then there's the joy of watching all the other runners. But to the competitors themselves, it means a great deal. First, let me ask you, how has your training went for the race that you're going to run tomorrow?
You know what? My training went great. Believe it or not, even though I'm in my mid-50s, I ran more miles in my training for this race than ever before in any of my other races. And as a runner, you know that we keep track of stuff like that oftentimes, writing down how far we ran and how we felt and things like that. So I keep track, and I did more miles in my training this time than ever before. So I feel I'm ready to go. And I'm excited.
But what people don't understand, no matter how you train, you never know how you're going to feel on race day.
That is correct. It's always a question.
Sure. I mean, you could think, it's not going to be the best race, and you could have such an energy level, and your legs could have such spring to them. And conversely, you could feel, you're going to have the race of your life, and you just don't have it. And there's no way to get around the marathon. I mean, if you're feeling on the par physically and then you start getting beat up mentally, there's nowhere to hide. There are no teammates to turn to. And it's a long way to go then to finish it. And I think it's twofold with marathoners, Doc. There are those who want the personal best time. They're goal-oriented in the time, like I'm sure you are right now. You have a particular goal in mind that you want to meet, okay? And then there are the other runners who just want to see the finish line. I mean, they're under a little less pressure seeing the finish line. The ones that have the goal, if at some point during the race, I hate talking negatively, but I'm sure, Doc, you're mentally strong enough to absorb this negative talk. The ones who are goal-oriented, if they see they're not going to meet their goal during the race, it's not the happiest race to them at the end. Because I know one of the 8 I ran, my legs gave out after the midway point. It was raining. I wasn't going to get a personal best time. And I remember at a few hundred yards from the finish, I'm saying, what a miserable race. But I mumbled to another runner. And he really put me down. He said, "You're finishing the race. What's the matter with you?" And that jolted me back into perspective that it's a great accomplishment, just to finish it out. And I'm complaining about a personal best time that I couldn't meet. What's your favorite part of the race, Doc? Is it First Avenue when you come off the Queensboro Bridge and the crowds are really cheering?
I have to say that might be the thing that shocked me the most the first time I ran it, which was in 2002. The Queensboro Bridge, for those who don't, even if you live in New York, I don't think most people realize this, is a mountain. Just go take a look at that bridge sometime from wherever you are. That thing is way up high in the air. And so, right, you start the race, you go over the Verrazano Bridge. Most of the race is spent in Brooklyn. You spend about 13 miles in Brooklyn. You jump over, I guess, the Pulaski Bridge, and you're into Queens for like a couple of minutes, it seems. And then there's the Queensboro Bridge. And it's this long slog up the bridge. And along the way, up until that point, there's great crowds and there's energy. And then all of a sudden, the only thing you hear are the other runners. And it's just you and them for this long trek up the bridge. And then once you crest it and you come off and you loop around and you're on First Avenue, you're hit with this wall of sound, this cheering, this jubilation, this energy. It always reminds me of that great quote with Joe DiMaggio and Marilyn Monroe. After they were married, as the story goes, Marilyn Monroe said she was going to go to Korea and entertain the troops. And DiMaggio was like, "No, you're not." And she's like, "Yes, I am." And so she did. And I think that was like maybe one of their first fights or whatever. And when she came back, she saw Joe, obviously. And she said, "Joe, you've never heard such cheering." And he just looked at her coldly and he said, "Yes, I have." And, I think like that same thing. Like I want to say to Joe DiMaggio, or like, you've never heard cheering like you hear when you get onto First Ave. And even though there's 50,000 runners or 60,000 runners, whatever it is, every one of you feels like they're cheering for you. And it's pure wonderment. And that keeps you going. But yeah, you come off that bridge and you still have 10 miles to go. And as you go up First Ave and you head into the Bronx, and it's just like, oh my goodness, how am I going to go another 10 miles? Especially when the cheering wanes as you get further and further away.
Bronx, after from miles 16 to 18, you're hitting the Bronx. It's kind of quiet for a little while. I mean, you don't.
They've done a better job the last few years of making the Bronx more exciting with bands and big banners and TVs and things like that. So they've made it. It used to be the quiet Bronx, right? You go into like.
I mean, that's the excitement, obviously, on the Verrazano Bridge in the beginning. Now, in the past, in the old days, you had no chips put on you. So I remember it depends where you lined up on the bridge. It wasn't organized. It was like a gentleman, a ladies' agreement.
Correct. The chips are now on the bib.
Right. And
they don't put them on your shoe anymore.
It would take me 3 minutes to get to the starting line. The clock would be going and that would be counting against my time. And then you're still backloaded, but you had flexibility. You could cheat a little, which some people did. I didn't do it. But one year I got caught all the way in the front with the elite guys, and I'm frantically trying to work my way to the back, like just the opposite. And then when you enter at the end of the race, you're entering Central Park. There's a 3-mile stretch at the end. You think you're finishing up. Oh, you're finally entering the park, but that's a long 3 miles to go. You think of it, 3 miles. That's a pretty good jog normally. And, so you really got a long way to go. But
when you get to Central Park, you're thinking, oh, good, I made it. And then you got this. It's like the longest part of the race is when you come out of Central Park onto Central Park South and you make the right-hand turn before you go back into the park to finish. That stretch on Central Park South, how far is it? Half a mile? Maybe 3/4 of a mile? It's not that far.
Jack, I know you guys are into this marathon thing, but I think if we had any audience, they're probably gone now.
No, I think we've actually increased our audience 5.
A number of them want to know about the race. It's tomorrow, guys. But listen, okay, but we wish you the best of luck tomorrow, Doc. You're going to let us know, obviously, next week. where, we'll hear about how the race went and all. And, we wish you the best of luck. But that leads into a marathon question, actually.
And
Go ahead.
Correct. And so here's the question. Do you believe the world record in the marathon was just set just last month, September 25th, 2022 by Kipchoge? He ran a marathon in 2:01:09. Do either of you believe that there will be someone who can run a sub 2-hour marathon?
Good.
I want to say yes, but I'm going to say no. A minute, and they'd have to do a minute and 10 seconds quicker. You're running at that speed. Where are you going to get the time a minute and 10 seconds? That's like saying is a 100-meter guy going to run it in under 9 seconds someday. Are we going to have someone? I mean, I just don't see it. But then again, if you asked me years ago, would someone run at 2:01:09, I wouldn't have thought they could go that quick either. I mean, to put it in perspective, Bill Rogers' best time was in the 2:09s. Alberto Salazar, 2:08, great American marathoners. Of course, we're living in a different age. If we prorate it to the half marathon record, I don't know what it is off the top of my head. I should have looked it up. I would guess it's 58 minutes and something. Okay, Doc, if you could look that up. But that would be my guess. But it doesn't work that way. If you could run half the marathon that way to do the second half. What is the
57:31.
You want to know something, Doc? If it's 57:31, wow. I'm going to guess someone is going to do it.
Listen, here's the easy answer. I think Mac's getting antsy with the marathon stuff.
Mac, it's got to be. Listen, if you left it up to Mac, he'd want to talk about the new baseball rule changes, about the shift and all that right now.
That's for another time.
He tortured me with that already, so he's getting a little payback, Mac.
That's
my answer to sum it up. We're not going to spend much time on it more. I could see a 1:59:57. Let me retract my answer. I didn't realize the half was that quick. Yeah. On the right course, right weather conditions.
Don't you guys think it has a lot to do with the sneakers today than it did back then too? I mean, today they got the sneakers that almost got springs in them, where you guys used to have to run in the Converse or the Keds. And I think training's a lot different back now than it was back then too. So I think it's extremely possible that gets done.
The running shoes for marathoners were good in the 80s. They really were good. They weren't it wasn't like the basketball players, Keds and Converse. There was specialized running shoes then. I know I used to go to a running store to get mine. See, the shoes even were good back then.
Yeah. I'll say this. There was a point in time when no one thought that anybody could break a 4-minute mile, right? And then they did. I think the history of humankind is that we figure out ways to get better. And, you made the point that back when Bill Rogers won it was 2:09 or whatever. And now the record's 2:01, right? So is there going to be somebody who's a minute and a half faster or so? Of course there will be. Somebody will break a 2-hour marathon. I'll just say this to end the marathon discussion. It's impressive to run a 2-hour marathon, obviously, and that's what the winner's going to do. He's going to finish in a little over 2 hours, maybe under. Probably not in New York. It's probably impossible to set the world marathon.
No way in New York.
It's such a grueling course. But the winner tomorrow will probably have 2:05, 2:06, whatever, something like that. The people who are really working harder are the guys like me, 4:15, 4:30, somebody finishing in 5 hours, 6 hours. We have to run that guy's race 2 or 3 times. The guy who wins is done in 2 hours. They get to rest. We're out there for another 2 hours or 3 hours or 4 hours. So it becomes grueling.
Yes, we're going to end the conversation, but the winning time, you want a prediction, 2:09:48.
That's your time?
Yeah, 2:09:48, whoever wins.
All right. I'm just hoping to break 4:30. If I can get 4:15, I'll be thrilled. Let's
And
go
Doc-
back. Yes,
And
sir.
Doc, before you do, let's talk a little bit about Roy White. You brought him up, perhaps the best left fielder in Yankees history, and I think he was too. You're going to have that. I know you got a book coming out. I think is it this month, Doc? The book
That's coming out in April. The book
right,
comes out in April.
April. Okay, and you're going to go there with Roy White for. Is that a book signing you're doing there?
It's going to be a great event. It's at Ramapo College on November 17th, which is just 10 days away or so.
Right.
And Roy White runs a foundation called the Roy White Foundation, and they give scholarships to students to help them with their first year college costs, the books, computers, whatever it might be, up to about $750. And so what we want to do is we want to support the Roy White Foundation. So we came up with this wonderful event called An Evening with Roy White. I'm going to host it. Roy's going to be there. We're going to be again on the campus of Ramapo College in Mahwah. And basically it's going to be a question and answer session, not unlike Center Stage, if you will, on or so many of those other types of shows that are out there. I'm going to talk to Roy White about his life and his career, what he overcame, what made him successful, what it was like playing with so many great other players, what was it like being a World Series champion, etc. And then we're going to open up the floor to the audience. So the people in the audience can ask Roy White questions. Everybody in attendance will get a autographed 8x10 photo of Roy White. People get a chance to meet Roy White. As you know, actually, I would have never met him if not for you and this program. He is the nicest guy, gentleman to the nth degree. And in writing the book, I talked with Ray Negron, Yankee executive. I talked with Marty Appel, probably the greatest Yankee historian. I talked with some of his teammates, John Sippen, who he played with in Japan, Ian Dixon, who he played with in the minor leagues. I talked to Willie Randolph. I talked to Chris Chambliss. Everybody, every single person who mentioned Roy White talked about what a classy human being he is, what a great person. And so this is your chance to meet a great human being who happened to be a great Yankee. And it's only $30 to attend. All of the proceeds go right back to the Roy White Foundation, which is, again, there to help kids pay their way in college, which gets more and more difficult every single year. So that's the event.
Go ahead, Jack.
Something about Roy White, he played, unfortunately, in the wrong era, even though he had a highly successful career and was very much appreciated in his era. If he were playing today, he would be elevated even more because the things he did, the way he could draw a walk, get on base, I mean, the analytics would have favored him more today. He would have been, much more appreciated today than he was back then, and he was appreciated back then, but today even more so he would have been.
Yeah, I think it's important that we don't forget Roy White because there's a lot of Yankee fans out there right now that don't know the story and may not even know his name. And he really contributed to the Yankees of the 70s and, of course, played with those guys, the Mickey Mantles and stuff like that. So, he deserves to be at Monument Park. He deserves to have a Roy White Day. He deserves all that stuff. I wish he'd come back and maybe play. I guess there's no more old timers games, but he would have been great for that too back then. So important we remember Roy White.
And I don't want to go on too many tangents, but this has been my big argument. And this isn't a debate against whether Paul O'Neill deserves to have his number retired or anything like that. You want to retire his number? Good. He was a great Yankee. I don't think he reaches that echelon, but I don't want to have that debate. But when you start to retire numbers and have special days for these most recent Yankees, and then you put them in Monument Park and you exclude the guys who came before them, what you then do is you then erase those other guys' legacies. And that's the problem with what the Yankees are doing. People will now always know Paul O'Neill. That's great. Good. Great for Paul O'Neill. People will always know Tino Martinez because he's out there. That's great. Good for Tino Martinez. But as they do that, they're forgetting guys who the Yankees have forgotten, who are every bit as good, if not better than those guys, who are also world champions, who the Yankees decided not to honor. And then the fans of today, as you mentioned, Mac, they don't even know who these guys are. And that's just a shame. It's a shame to their legacy, and it's a shame to the legacy of the Yankees. So they have to start to rectify those things. And it should begin with Roy White and get him out there, Monument Park.
You mentioned Tino Martinez. We like Tino Martinez a lot. But even going off Roy White a second, you mean to tell me that Tino Martinez was a plaque in Monument Park, right? He has a plaque there.
I believe so, yeah.
Right. You mean to tell me he was a greater Yankee than Greg Nettles, who doesn't? I mean, I don't see it. And I love Tino Martinez. Don't get me wrong. But I lived through watching them both play. I know what I witnessed. I know what I saw. I'm not a young person who has to read up about it and look at facts, figures, or whatever. I know what I witnessed. I know what I felt. I know how I rooted. And great respect to Tino Martinez, but no, he's not quite on Greg Nettles' level. If you want to say he's close, you can make an argument if you want, but Greg Nettles to me clearly deserves a plaque in Monument Park more than a Tino Martinez. I hate picking on Tino Martinez, and I don't want to say he doesn't deserve a plaque. You can debate that if you want, but Greg Nettles deserves one more.
Oh, yeah.
And Roy White.
And Roy White. Oh, absolutely, Roy White. You know when it's going to be a problem? I'm going to tell you, if the Yankees bring back Brett Gardner, we all love Gardy. You know the way I feel about Gardy. And they give him a plaque in Monument Park ahead of Roy White, left fielder to left fielder. That's a problem with me, a major problem.
It's an affront. That's what I'm saying. That's not right to the guys who came before.
Greg Gardner is a nice imitation of Roy White, but not as good.
That's
okay.
Correct.
A nice imitation. It's like, Roy White's the real thing. Brett Gardner's a good tasting artificial type, And I love Gardy. No one's talked much.
Yeah, again, we're not saying bad things about Tino or Paul O'Neill or Brett Gardner, but I don't think teams like the Yankees necessarily think through the ramifications of the decisions that they make. And when you make a decision to start to honor the most recent great players or very good players, you're then neglecting to represent and recognize those guys that came before them. So Hank Bauer was every bit as good, if not better, and won more championships than Paul O'Neill. They both played right field. You can't recognize Paul O'Neill and ignore Hank Bauer. They played the same position, but Hank Bauer is forgotten. Nobody knows him because the Yankees haven't taken the time to make the fans know who Hank Bauer is because they haven't recognized him, but they've recognized Paul O'Neill, and that's where the problem is.
I kind of wonder, does ticket selling or having a modern guy as an attraction plays a big role? Because I know I'm a voter as far as, the International Boxing Hall of Fame and a couple of other Hall of Fames, too. And I know that, normally the presidents of those organizations, the people in charge of the banquet, how could bring in money, this and that, they kind of prefer a living guy, a guy who has enough family members to attend, a guy who will have a little more pull, a little more recognizable pull because it increases your product a little more. So you take a case with the Yankees. So if you have a modern guy like Paul O'Neill, who's a broadcaster, you get a little more a bang for your buck than you would with a Roy White, who's in a Greg Nettles, who are extremely deserving. But what do they mean to the current Yankee hierarchy?
So I do have an answer for that, and I have a way around it. When the Yankees had Paul O'Neill Day, they could have at the same exact time said, it's Paul O'Neill Day, or it's Yankee right fielder day, or whatever, and said, while we're recognizing Paul O'Neill, we should also take this time to recognize another great right fielder, Hank Bauer. And here's the thing. For most of his career, Hank Bauer wore number 9, which is the same number Nettles wore, which is the same number Roger Maris wore, and it's retired in Roger Maris's name. So you could say, you know what? Number 9's already retired. And so we're going to say it's retired for Roger Maris and Hank Bauer, because Hank Bauer is now in Monument Park as well. Or don't retire his number, but you don't even have to take another number out of circulation. But when you're honoring the one to get the crowd, you could still use part of that time to honor somebody else.
Sure. Sure. Agree.
All right. So, great. I love when everybody agrees with me. So let me talk about a few other things. No, I'm kidding. So let's go to the next question. We were talking about dynasties before. We're going to go back to baseball. And the question is, which Major League Baseball team is positioned to have the most success for the rest of the decade? So we were talking about were the Astros a dynasty, but who's going to be the best team going forward for the next 3, 5, 8 years? What do you think?
Without going over all the names, I think the Atlanta Braves, because they're doing things the right way, signing their young players to contracts way ahead of free agency. They're not letting them get there. And it's always a gamble when you do that, because you're projecting the player's going to be really good. You're taking a little bit of a gamble, but you're signing them for a lot less money than you ultimately would have to pay. And guess what? You have this guy on your team 8-9 years now, something the Yankees should have done with Aaron Judge. Atlanta's done that. And Atlanta also has shown enough willingness to go out and spend on free agents as well. Maybe not break the bank, but spend heavy money. For example, when they lost Freddie Freeman through a misunderstanding, they offered Freddie Freeman $28 million a year for 5 years. For whatever reason, there was miscommunication, and Freeman wound up on the Dodgers. They turned around and they got Matt Olson from the Oakland Athletics and signed him to a long-term deal at, let's say, $21 million a year. They weren't sure how good he would be, but based on the last year he had at Oakland, they thought he'd be good. And guess what? He was excellent for Atlanta last year. Ronald Acuna, the 10-year deal, $10 million a year for 10 years. That's a bargain if Acuna's going to be good. And other teams are following that blueprint. Plus, Atlanta, like I said, is willing to spend money on decent free agents. Like they got Charlie Morton back from Tampa, what was it, a year ago, whatever. And they're going to be teams that are always going to be in prime position. The Dodgers are always going to have money. The Yankees, whatever. The Mets, of course, Steve Cohen is outrageous. And I don't mean this in a bad way. But I think Atlanta's got the right idea. They're willing to sign guys far in advance. That's the blueprint I think every team should use. It's a gamble, but I think it's a gamble that more often than not is going to pay off when you're talking about, star-type players.
Yeah, guys, I'm gonna go with the Baltimore Orioles. I mean, they're a very young team. They play very hard. It seems like they got a good farm system down there. And, they were exciting this year. I mean, they were hanging in there and they were playing tough all this year. They almost made the playoffs. I'm going to go with Baltimore just because of the youth. I think they got a great program going there. I think their team will get better next year. I think they'll be competing for the playoffs either next year or the year after that. And I just love watching some of these older teams become good again. The Baltimore Orioles, who were in the late 60s, were we talked about them earlier, a great team. And it seems like they're heading back in that direction. So I'm going to go with Baltimore, guys.
It's a great pick. I'm going to say I think the great teams will be the Astros because they have
one team. You allow one team.
Oh, my goodness. You make it so hard on me.
Most likely. Read the question, Doc.
I know, but I like to.
There was no S at the end.
You saw my answer. I picked 3.
I know, but I'm tired of getting these edges over us. And
all right,
you're going to gloat that you were correct.
But I never gloat. I never say, the only thing I've ever written down was your time here to predict for the marathon. So we'll see next week.
9:48. Yeah.
But anyway, all right. So I'm going to say the Dodgers because the Dodgers are willing to spend the money and do whatever it takes, and they seem to have that seems to be their modus operandi. I wouldn't say that the Mets would also do that, and I wouldn't say that the Astros also seem to be a team that keeps being able to win, and the Padres as well. So I won't mention those other teams, and I'll just say the Dodgers.
Yeah, you know what could be a good debate question, maybe for next week if I remember. Just a list of free agents, and we could just predict what one team are they most likely to wind up on. You know, the bunch. That's a hard one because we really don't know, and they don't know now. I'm sure they don't know, but how can we see it kind of playing out for every individual one, like Edwin Diaz, Jacob deGrom, of course, Aaron Judge, Dansby Swanson, you know, the shortstop on Atlanta, Trey Turner, the Dodgers shortstop, Bogarts on the Red Sox. I mean, a lot of high-profile guys out. There's going to be really a lot of shaking going on there, and I'm sure certain teams that were disappointing this year, like my pick to win the World Series that fell flat, the Toronto Blue Jays, they've shown a tendency to spend money. I'm sure they're going to go after someone, you know, and spend big money. But who knows? Steve Cohen with the Mets, the Yankees aren't going to sit still. I mean, they're not going to sit still. I mean, they have to do something, even if it's just re-signing the guys they have. And no one, you know, we talk about Judge. No one talks about Anthony Rizzo.
Oh, I did on the Yankee show today.
He's a valuable piece. I mean, Anthony Rizzo's got a lot left in the tank. I know he's an older guy. You're not going to sign him to a, 5-6 year deal, but he can be had easily on a 4-year deal. Probably a 3-year deal, but definitely a 4-year deal. But who's going to step forward? Who has the money to take a chance?
There's not a lot of first basemen out there, and I think Anthony Rizzo is actually a big, important player for the Yankees to bring back. Of course, with Judge too, but I think the Yankees. I think Mac makes a great point about Baltimore ascending. Usually, my perspective is a team like Baltimore ascends. Then I think next year they may fall back a little before they put it back together again, and then they reach that next level.
Let me tell you about the Orioles.
I'm sorry, but if the Yankees don't bring back Anthony Rizzo, they're going to have a big hole at first base. And if Judge decides to go somewhere else, and I agree with you, I don't think they know where they're going at this point, any of these guys, because they have to see what the deals are.
I think that's
being offered. I think the Yankees could finish below Baltimore. That's my big point. Go on.
Let me just say something about Baltimore last year. They were contending for playoff position, actually. They always seem to be about, a few games behind, but they were actually contending, and they were right there at a certain point in the summer. And then they trade Trey Mancini to Houston. And a team that thinks they can make the playoffs, I mean, why do that? And speaking of Trey Mancini, he certainly doesn't mind because he's, might be a World Series winner now. As Vasquez, the Red Sox catcher, was traded. He hated leaving Boston. He's on Houston. He might be a World Series winner. So how do you like that?
So that brings up the question, which was one of, I think, the last question that Jack submitted to us here. Who do you think will be the World Series MVP?
You mentioned Roy White before. He was talking when he was on the show with Mac and myself a long time ago. In 1978, he seemed to be right there close to getting MVP. It just takes one game to put you over the top. When Reggie got in 77, he had to with the 3-home run game. I remember before the game on the radio, on the way to the ballpark, listening to Mel Allen talking about who can be the MVP. And he mentioned a few names, Munson, this, that. Jackson was right there. One game just puts you over the top. One game. With that said, I mean, yes, I think it's coming from Houston because I think they're winning the series. Gurriel, their first baseman, Pena, their shortstop, or Altuve. I think Altuve is going to get it. I'm banking on Altuve to get a couple of hits, be neck and neck at least. And I think Altuve I think he has a big game tonight. How's that? So I think it's Jose Altuve, and I don't know how popular choice that'll be when all is said and done, but I think he'll get it.
Yeah, I like the young shortstop Pena. I think he's playing great ball defensively, offensively, and he's a rookie on top of it. So I would go with Pena, thinking that, because this is his first World Series and that he has played great defensively, hitting with a little power, getting on base a lot, I would go with Pena.
And you already know my answer, which is totally different than both of yours. And it's just one guy, Jack. I'm not picking the whole team, just picking one player. The MVP of the 2022 World Series will be Bryce Harper, because the Phillies will win tonight. I don't really believe that. I think it's over. But if I have to make a prediction, I like to base my predictions on hope and magic and who knows what could happen. Bryce Harper hits a couple of bombs tonight, helps the Phillies win tonight, and then hits a big home run or comes up with a big double or a triple tomorrow night, and the Phillies become the world champions, and the MVP of the World Series becomes Bryce Harper. And then for the next 35 years, I can complain about the fact that he should have been a Yankee.
All right. There you go.
Yeah, the mindset changes. A lot of times MVPs are picked on sentiment, okay? And Bryce Harper would be a sentimental choice. Like, you take this 1971 World Series. I mean, even though the Baltimore loses to Pittsburgh in 7 games, but Roberto Clemente was the big star, the big focal point. But Steve Blass pitched 2 games, and he won both games. He shut down the vaunted Baltimore Oriole lineup, yet Clemente gets MVP. And sometimes it's not even sentiment. The Miracle Mets in 69, Jerry Koosman won both games. He was great, magnificent form. Yet Don Clendenin hit 3 home runs, their first baseman. So the glamour of the home run was greater then than even today. So Clendenin gets MVP. You never know what they're thinking. But I think with all factors, sentiment, could play a role in it at times, or a guy, a charisma, how charismatic the guy was during the series. But at the end of the day, how important is it? Guys, if I threw this question at you now, chances are one of you would know this, but it looks good on a resume, but what would it mean? This year's past All-Star game, who is the MVP of the All-Star game?
I have no idea.
No clue.
Okay. You're going to laugh. Giancarlo Stanton. And it's going to look good on his resume. Oh, MVP of the 2022 All-Star game. Giancarlo Stanton. So what do these things really mean? He was MVP. And he can always list that, as I said, amongst his credentials. Well, what did Stanton do to justify the contract? Well, he was MVP of the All-Star game. Think of all the stars, So
that's amazing.
What it's worth. Yeah.
No clue. I don't really follow the All-Star game. So, but the next question, this one comes from Mac, is what do you think the Mets are going to do? Do they rebuild the team? Do they let their star pitchers go? Do they go after other big free agents? Where do you see the Mets going as the winter progresses? What do you think?
Well,
good, Jack.
Yeah, I'll go. I don't think the Mets have to do much. What concerns me about the Mets is Francisco Lindor and Pete Alonso had great years. They can't get any better, really, than they were. I mean, you would hope they could repeat those great years, but they had career years. The Mets did win 101 games. Don't forget that. But they collapsed at the end of the year. They basically fell apart, getting swept by the Cubs at home, blowing the division, not getting the bye, and then losing to San Diego the way they did in the playoffs. But they got to address their key free agents, Jacob deGrom, Edwin Diaz, Brando Nimmo. Brando Nimmo's a nice little piece in the outfield, a nice little piece. But if they don't sign him, they could turn around and Andrew Benintendi, for example, they could flip-flop certain ways. They'll address that. Edwin Diaz, I'm confident they'll pay him the money, I don't know how many years, how much. Jacob deGrom, if they lose him, do they then veer to Justin Verlander? Do they veer to another pitcher like Carlos Rendon, it's sticky. It's sticky. Like Mac has mentioned to me in the past, even though these owners have all this money, that's why they have all this money. Steve Cohen's not going to throw money away. Hopefully he's going to think whatever he does is a good investment, but they've got to address their own free agents. But with that said, there are a number of other good free agents out there, but but most of the other good free agents in the shortstop position. Okay. And that's not something the Mets need. I can't see them moving Lindor to second base or getting a new free agent and moving him to second base. I think the Mets, if they hold serve, okay, and just tweak the team otherwise, they'll be fine. But holding serve is basically re-signing their guys and then tweaking the team with other pickups that don't have to be major acquisitions, but middle of the road good acquisitions.
What do you think, Mac?
Well, I'm not sure if I'm right or not, but I think I saw on Facebook that they did sign Jacob deGrom to a 3-year, $121 million contract. I'm not sure. I saw on Facebook, so I'll take it for what
it didn't happen. It didn't happen unless it happened in the last hour.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. It's a Facebook thing. So,
ladies and gentlemen, we are blessed. It looks like. Look at this in the airport. Where are you? Where are you, Jamie?
Right now, I am in Tennessee, Nashville Airport, waiting to.
Jamie, listen. I don't want to confuse you, but the Phillies are playing the Astros in the World Series, and the game is in Houston.
Yeah, I know.
You're in the wrong state.
I'm about to load a plane to go to Houston.
Oh,
so don't worry, I'll get there. There ain't no way they keep me out of that stadium.
I believe that. How you doing, Pags?
I'm running on fumes, but I'm doing okay.
Pags, there's a difference of opinion with Doc and Mac. Doc is predicting the Phillies win the next 2 games. He's went out on the limb. He's predicting the Phillies win the World Series. Mac says it's all over.
Don't believe that.
I think it was Jack who said the World Series is all
Mac
over.
didn't say anything. When I said it was all over, Mac didn't say anything, and I detected a nod from Mac. I detected a nod.
Pat, who's going to be the MVP of the World Series?
Jack is, has got a line to who's that Mets announcer? I can't think of his name. Oh, that's right, Hernandez. That bum of a baseball player. He's got that direct line to him, and I guess he's all upset because the Mets aren't playing in it, but that's okay. I think that we win tonight. Game 7's a Game 7. It's going to be tough, but I think that we win tonight and we at least push it to Game 7. And then I think it's just a matter of Nola pitching good for a few innings. And I think that they're going to have quick hooks on both Wheeler and Nola. And you're going to see Ranger Suarez come in probably in both games, which is why he's not starting either one of them. So, it's just the bat's got to wake up. I think that it actually works to our benefit that you got Valdez pitching tonight because they're going to have to switch left and right, which means that they're going to move Harper up in the lineup 1 spot. And I think that's important because you're going to need to have him in the number 3. And I think in the process of that, you're going to move Nick Castellanos back 1 spot. You're going to move Bohm up to the number 5 and Castellanos to the 6. And just because I think that Rob Thompson is in such a way that he won't change the batting order too drastically, that's a small enough of a change that could try to spark some of the bats going. But unfortunately, I feel like that we lost a really big opportunity to, go up 3-2 in the series.
Yeah. Well, you got to admit, Pags, even if you guys don't win this, you guys have had a hell of a year. This is something that Philly can be proud of, and who knows what happens next year. But you got to be proud of them this year.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, this has been a great ride all the way around, and I don't want it to end tonight, obviously. But you know, and really it's like, you know, how do you feel if it's a really close game that goes to game 7 and you lose, you know, 5-4 or 4-3 or even 1-0 in a game 7? I think runs are going to be at a premium in these next 2 days, and I think that bodes better for the Phillies if they're really close games. Now, obviously, we lost game 5 3-2, which was a really close game, but I kind of think that the Phillies are going to have a little bit more with their backs up against the walls, and Houston having a little bit of a sigh of relief that they could finish it out, you know, that they have 2 games to be able to finish it out.
Why not treat Zach Wheeler like an ace? The way you were talking, well, they want to get whatever they can out of Wheeler. I mean, between Wheeler and Nola, you got to put your faith in these guys. If these guys can't do it for you, you have to accept you can't beat them. I mean, unless Wheeler's velocity is off, his control is off, or it's hurting a little bit, you stretch these guys out because they're the best you have. I don't understand whatever you're going to bring in out of the bullpen. In reality, he's not going to be better than Wheeler unless it's late in the game.
Well, I look at it as there's something that's happening right now where his pitches are hanging a little bit, and that was enough. I mean, obviously, you saw in the first inning where he was able to get. They were going after the first pitch, and Wheeler's known for his first pitch strikes. And I really said that every game has been won by the pitchers that throw the most first pitch strikes. And Wheeler was doing that, and he was getting hit. They were just attacking that first pitch. He's got to get it down in the zone. He cannot get it up high, and they've been hanging. Even his breaking ball hung a little bit, and they were able to just get right on top of it. So moving forward, he's going to have. That's why I think he's going to have a small hook, because not only that, if when we make it to a game 7, it's a all hands on deck. So that means if you need Wheeler for an inning, you're going to bring him in for an inning. Nola, same situation. It's like Suarez. That's why I think he pitches 2 innings in game 6 and 2 innings in game 7. So I think it's going to be literally every pitcher available. You're going to see every 20, like all 26 guys being utilized to get to win this World Series.
Sounds great.
Pags, who's going to be the MVP of the World Series?
Short of a unique play, I mean, I think right now, if it's a Phillies, it would be Harper, because right now they're absolutely pitching around him because they're afraid of what he can do. I think Schwarber's been okay, but he hasn't been enough, to be able to warrant the MVP. And as of right now, if I was the Astros, I'd have to say that the MVP is McCormick because of the series he had up in Philly. Obviously, he's a Westchester kid, so he lives right at, he grew up right outside of Philadelphia and was a Phillies fan. But he literally was the saving grace in the last game. He batted amazing in the first couple games of the series in Philly. So it's, I would have to say that he would be the unsung hero and possibly the MVP, just based on his defense and his offense. Now, obviously, he hasn't had the big bat like Pena has, but I think Pena's got a couple of home runs. But I think it would have to be McCormick.
Great stuff. You want to stick around and continue with the debate questions, or?
Sure, I can stick around for. I think I'll start moving until 10 after 9.
Let me ask you how you feel about this. Jalen Hurts grew up around the Houston area. He's a big Houston Astro fan. He's not saying it out publicly loud, but he hasn't denied it. He's rooting for the Houston Astros to beat the Philadelphia Phillies. Said he's the Eagle quarterback. How does the Philadelphia fan base kind of respond to a Jalen Hurts? We've seen things like that once. I remember LeBron James when he played for the Cavaliers, he attended a Yankee-Cleveland playoff game with a Yankee jacket on, and the fans joked with him because he's LeBron James, a big superstar. Would they actually get ticked off, the Philly fans, at Jalen Hurts if he ever said outwardly, yeah, I'm rooting hard for the Astros?
No, I don't think so. I think that, the one thing that the Philadelphia fan is loyal. And we respect loyalty, and he grew up in that area. He was a long-term fan. It's like, when Allen Iverson, I think, grew up in Virginia, but it was a Dallas Cowboys fan. He's pretty outwardly spoken about that too. That even then it was like, all right, he always was a Cowboys fan. He ain't changing to the Eagles. So the Eagles are never going to use him to be any type of ceremonial guy in that regard. And I think that that's kind of the same way here. The Phillies aren't going to ever have Jalen Hurts throw out the first pitch unless he wins a Lombardi trophy, and I think that that's just more of, just the respect on him. I mean, he plays football for this team. If he said he was a Houston Texans fan and then lost to the Texans, well, then there's a whole different scenario. I look at, when I think of, Aaron Rodgers playing up against San Francisco and him getting beat all the time, that it's harder to play against your home team. And I think you saw that in the first half. When I watched the tape of what happened over there, it looked like they were struggling a little bit. And I think that had something to do with the fact that you're playing at home. So there are more nerves. The human aspect of that comes into play a lot. So the fact that he's an Astros fan, I mean, they were watching the World Series in the locker room. So I got to imagine that he's not the only person that was from the Houston area on the team, that there's probably other players, and that there was a Phillies side and then there was an Astros side. And, it's all good fun. I look at it as, if we all love the same team, we'd have nothing to talk about. That's why I like I said, I know more about the Yankees than I ever really cared to because of you guys over here, and they're sitting on the couch just like every other team is. So waiting to find out what's going to happen to Judge.
Yeah, so that we touched a little upon that. I'm sure we're going to talk a lot more about that. And actually, the last question is from Mac, and it basically says, what should the Yankees do going into the off season here? Should they go with their younger players or let the older players give it a shot and make one last playoff run with these guys? What do you think? You want to start?
Yeah, me personally, I believe that, you need to have some veteran leadership, but you can't have all veteran leadership. It can't be all like veterans, because the window, again, you have to catch a little bit of lightning in the bottle, and that's kind of what the Phillies did here. They caught some lightning. They were able to, get hot at the right time, but it takes some young guys and some old guys. And I think when you have a whole bunch of old guys doing it, you have what's happening with the Lakers. They're not able to really sustain. That they could have a couple of good games together, but you need some youth to add a little bit of vigor to the staff in total. And I think that, like in Houston, I mean, you have a rookie, Pena, who's doing great. You know what I mean? And then you have a couple of young guys that are, I mean, what's it? Not Altuve, but the guy who was hitting the home runs. Who won the game against Seattle. I mean, I think he's only like 24, 25 years old. So you need to have some youth and some veteran leadership, because you want somebody who's actually won it before, who can help direct you to win it. And I feel like that's where Schwarber really is worth it here. Because even Harper can be the outspoken leader in the clubhouse, but he's never been there either. So he has to take some pointers from Schwarber, because he has been in those situations. And it's got to be the same way with every team. So the Yankees, I don't think you can go solely veteran. I think you have to bring in some of the young guys in process, and they have to be part of the solution to be able to move forward together.
Great point. What do you think, Jack?
Guys are under contract. It's not that easy. I mean, my buddy Mac is going to say, get rid of this guy, get rid of that guy. But if he's under contract, I mean, even though Mac would be 100% correct, you can't just get rid of the guy unless you're willing to eat the contract. And Doc, I don't want to hear you say, well, the Mets ate Robinson Cano to remain his remaining contract. You can do that, but you don't want to. When you invested all this money in a guy, you at least want to keep him around. And you ever hear the term get your money's worth, at least as much as you can. The Yankees have one more year, Josh Donaldson on the contract. Obviously, I think they would move on from Donaldson if they could. But what are they going to do if they can't trade him anywhere? They're not going to eat $16 million. Aaron Hicks, they have what, like 3 or 4 years more, $10 million a year? They hope to rehabilitate Aaron Hicks. I know, Doc, you wanted to just get rid of him at one point last year when he was underperforming, and you weren't wrong. So you stick with these guys to an extent, you have to. So it's not that easy. Obviously, the Yankees want to re-sign Judge, who I think they're going to lose. I think they're going to, let's say they can re-sign Judge or Rizzo. There are other guys, that's Anthony Benintendi. He's a valuable piece. Re-sign him. Get someone else on the free agent market. You have your young guys. Anthony Volpe will be up before the end of the year. Make him your shortstop. Transition Pedraza to third base. Maybe I'm in the minority, but I like Gleyber Torres a lot. I wouldn't trade him anyway. I think that would be a mistake. And if Anthony Rizzo leaves, you have DJ LeMayo play him at first base. He'll be a good first baseman for you. He won't have the power of an Anthony Rizzo, but he'll still be good. And concentrate, look what's out there in the pitching market. Because if they can afford to pay all this money to Judge, that Judge is probably going to turn down, up that type of offer. There's got to be other guys out there. Once the Mets fire the opening salvo and go after a Yankee player, let the Yankees go after Edwin Diaz so they have a legitimate closer. Yes, stay with the young guys, but you just can't get rid of the guys who are under contract. That's my argument. You're stuck with them. You're stuck with Josh Donaldson. You're stuck with Aaron Hicks unless someone else is going to take them off your hands, which isn't likely. So you try to rehabilitate those guys.
What do you think, Mac?
Well, I don't think you can go halfway. I mean, I know the Yankees, they want to go to the World Series every year, but they don't anyway. So you're doing the same thing every year. You're bringing in some players. You're going to the playoffs. You're not making the World Series. I think you got to go in with a clean slate, and Yankee fans have got to accept this. I think you go with almost all the young players. Jack mentioned a couple of them. I mean, even though Torres has been, he's still a young player. So you bring up what you got on the farm. I mean, we had some really big contributions from some of the young players that were there this year already. You probably have to hire another manager because you want a guy that can handle young players, that is a teacher rather than a guy that just sits there in the dugout. So it would take a lot. It would take, Jack, I know it's going to take a lot.
No, it's funny the way you say Aaron Boone just sits there in the dugout. It sounded funny.
He does.
I think he does more than that.
Yeah. He stands up and he spits out pumpkin seeds too, or whatever he spits out at the bar there. So,
he blows a lot of bubbles.
Yes, he does. He does have a good bubble go. Yeah, so, but anyway, I think, we're just doing the same thing every year, and it hasn't worked. So understanding, you're going to have to make some deals with teams. Maybe you take half the contract, give them half the contract. There's ways to work things out. But I really think if the Yankees want to have a team of the future, they got to start now, guys.
I'm going to agree with Mac on this, that the Yankees have to go all in. Whatever direction they go, it has to be all in. And I don't want to hear that this guy costs $20 million or that guy costs $30 million over the next 4 years or whatever. You know what? If you care about winning, you're going to do what it takes to win. If you care about just kind of competing, you're going to do the same thing. You know, yesterday I talked a lot about this on my 7 a.m. show. Brian Cashman talked about how the Yankees have a good process. It's a process. We like the process we're using. Well, if as a fan, I don't like the process you're using. You haven't gotten to the World Series in 13 years. So I don't know what the process is, but it's not working. And it's sort of a halfway, as Mac was saying. Well, we'll keep this guy, but we'll maybe go and we don't want to spend that much on this guy because that's a little too much. Again, and I'll harp on this for the next 37 years. The Yankees had an opportunity to get Bryce Harper, and for whatever reason, they didn't. And I would love the person, because there's people saying, well, that was Cashman. And there's people saying that was Steinbrenner. Well, I'd like the person who made that ultimate decision. If it's Cashman, I'd love him to say the reason we didn't get Bryce Harper was, or if it was Steinbrenner, I'd love him to say the reason we didn't get Bryce Harper was, and tell us. I didn't want to spend the money. All right, well, at least we know now. Or I didn't think he was good enough. Well, then you're foolish, because obviously he is, and he was, and he wanted to be a Yankee. So I think you have to go all in. And look, Donaldson is not the answer at third base. And if you're going to pencil him in at third base next year, you're going to have a similar season to this, and you're going to see him in the World Series probably do the same thing next year, strike out 94 times. It just gets silly. I had muted Pags. I don't know if he wants to add something because there was a lot of background noise. So I'm gonna unmute Pags here.
I agree with you on the going all in. It's you can't do a half measure. However, and I agree with you also that I don't think that their process is doing very well. But I think when I think of the Yankees right now, I think of like the Dallas Cowboys when Jimmy Johnson first got there. He said outwardly that the one team that we have to beat, and I am making my team, I am molding my team specifically to beat, was the Philadelphia Eagles at the time. And he molded his team specifically to beat the Philadelphia Eagles. And in the process of doing that, he was able to beat everybody else. And I feel like the Yankees have to do the same thing here. They have to figure out and mold the team to beat Houston. Because right now, Houston is the class of the AL, and until somebody knocks them off, they're going to continue to be that. And it looks to me like right now they still have another 4 or 5 years to go. So you have to mold the team and create a team that can beat Houston. And until you can do that, you're not going to get very far. Because I think if you could beat Houston, you could beat any team. And ultimately, that's what Cashman's got to do. And I don't even know if Boone's the manager to manage them to that part. Now, obviously, they don't pay me the big bucks to make those decisions. That's why they pay Cashman. But obviously, after 13 years of not being to the World Series, trust me, I know because we were there in that 13 years ago, and now we're back at least, which means that I feel like we've moved in the right direction, but we took advantage of a NL that was, even though you had the Dodgers and stuff like that, these teams were a little wishy-washy, that there wasn't a clear-cut winner, and getting hot at the right time makes the bigger difference. And I think that the Yankees couldn't get hot. They were hot in the beginning of the season, and then you kind of slowly cooled off and was able to get past Cleveland, but obviously not able to get past the Astros. And until somebody can beat the Astros, you guys are going to be stuck in the same position over and over again. And that's what's got to get figured out. So when you say go all in, that's what I say. That's what I believe as going all in is beating the Astros. We have to figure out a way to get out of our own heads and beat the Astros. And until you guys do that, you're going to wind up still second best in the AL or even third best with the rise of Seattle right now.
Would you guys make this deal if it was offered to you? You're in charge of the Yankees, hypothetically. You're guaranteed to have Judge and Rizzo back next year, re-signed, guaranteed. But you're not allowed to sign anyone else. You have to come back with the same team, or you risk losing Judge and Rizzo, and you can do whatever the heck you want. That's the reality we're dealing with right now.
Yeah,
What would you guys do? Would you make that deal with the Devils for Judge and Rizzo to come back?
No.
Absolutely guaranteed.
No,
You're
not at all.
risking
No, why bother? You already saw what you had with them, and you wasn't able to get it done.
Final 14. Why do we glorify college basketball if a team goes to the Final Four in the NCAA tournament? But we don't glorify it in baseball.
It's different.
If they go to the Final Four the way the Yankees.
It's different. It's different with the Yankees. Listen, this is my big complaint with the Yankees. You put on the Yes Network, you're going to be inundated for the entire time you're watching that channel. Of course, I like the Yes Network. And if you go to Yankee Stadium, you're going to be inundated. And of course, I love Yankee Stadium. But everywhere you go, 27-time world champions, shirts, count the rings. We're the best. 27 championships. We've got Babe Ruth. We've got Lou Gehrig. We've got Joe DiMaggio. We got Reggie. We got Jeter. Right? But they haven't done anything. Basically, this entire century. Stop saying you're the team that's a champion if you're not going to be willing to be the team that's the champion. So, yeah, I want Judge back. I want Rizzo back. But if that's all they're going to do, the Yankees aren't going to win the World Series again. It's a half measure, and that's the problem.
Not at all. Not at all.
Well, there are other guys, too. There's another signing that no one talks about back as a free agent. James Talon, one of their starting pitchers, is going to be a free agent. And to me, he's not going to be worth the money that he's going to command.
No.
I mean, if you just look at, we just picked up the center fielders. Is it Haber or Gaber?
Haber, yeah.
Harrison Bader. He's going to be our center fielder for probably the next 8 years anyway.
That's
I think he possibly could, Jack. I think he possibly could, and it's another good young player. So to me, you're starting something, but you're not finishing it. You're just okay. We'll pick up a good.
You come back with the veterans like a Matt Carpenter, who was
No. He was
terrible. He was terrible, Jack.
In the playoffs, he was awful. But
he was great for a month or so. It was fun. It was exciting. But that's what teams that are desperate do. They find the guy, they capture some magic in a bottle, and they go on a great run. And that's fun and it's great. And I loved Matt Carpenter. But you cannot go into the 2023 season thinking this guy whose career plummeted and had a magic month, one magic month over the last 4 years. You can't say that's our answer at DH. No, that's just a bad strategy. If the Royals did that, or the Orioles did that, or a smaller market team, you go, oh yeah, well, this is what we have to do. But this is the Yankees. They're supposed to be about winning, and so they haven't been winning. So you can't say, oh, well, we were in the Final Four. Yeah, that's not good enough for the Yankees. On occasion it is, but that's the best you've been able to do in 13 years. It's not good enough.
Let me just ask, Pags, are the Phillies eyeing any particular free agent you think? Who's the most likely of all the free agents who they might
We're not even thinking. I couldn't even answer that question right now. I've got 2 more World Series games to think about. So if you ask me that next Saturday, I may have a better answer for you. The first and foremost, the most glaring need that we need is a closer, and that's who if I was Dombrowski, that's who I would start to go after right away.
Edwin Diaz is the answer then.
Oh, then it hurt the Mets at the same time.
Yeah.
I don't know that Diaz is enough. I think he's okay. I don't think he's enough, and he's not like Hader of Houston. You know what I mean? I thought that there would be a little bit him coming in to get that 5-out save was going to be able to get him a little bit rattled in that second part of that, like in the 9th inning, we'd be able to get to him a little bit, and he was lights out. So we're going to have to do better than that, and I just don't think Diaz is enough.
Doc, very quickly, if you have a choice, you could sign one of these 2 free agents. Anthony Benintendi comes back to the Yankees of Brandon Nimmo. Same price.
Oh, wow, that's a great question. I think I might go after Brandon Nimmo, but I haven't thought about it in detail enough. But that's my gut right off the bat. But you know what? We're at the top of the hour. We did it. Pags, I want to thank you for coming in. Go Phillies.
Hey, listen, and not only that, Go Union, because we are in an MLS championship as well. I know soccer's not, is the forgotten sport on this show.
That's a question I was going to throw in there at the end.
Soccer talk,
But yes, listen, there's a championship to be won by two Philadelphia teams, and the Union get it done today against the LAFC. You'll be able to watch it. All of you guys will be able to watch it at 4:00 today on Fox, right before the World Series game. So.
Awesome. All right, go Philadelphia. Everybody else, thank you for watching. This has been the Mac, Jack, Pags, and Dr. Sem debate show. We'll see you again next Saturday at 8 a.m. Have a great, great week.
Take care.